Picture this. You're on the highway, lukewarm coffee in the cup holder. AC/DC's Highway to Hell blasting through the speakers. You're running late, a familiar tension thrumming under the surface. Suddenly a car cuts you off, no signal, so close you instinctively slam on the brakes. Before you can even think, the judgment is there, fully formed and visceral. What an absolute idiot. It's a reflex, right? We label the person, not the situation. But what if that driver wasn't an idiot? What if they were rushing to a hospital, or they'd just been fired and their head was spinning, or maybe, just maybe, their kid threw up in the back seat at that exact moment? That instantaneous leap from their action to their character is a glitch in our mental software. It's a cognitive shortcut that feels satisfying in the moment, but it's the very same glitch that fuels our worst judgments, not just on the road, but about the unemployed, the struggling parent, or the coworker who sends a blunt email. We think we're seeing a person's character when all we're really seeing is a single stressful moment in their lives. Okay, let's unpack this. That mental glitch, that powerful urge, to blame the individual, not the context.
Right. It's almost irresistible sometimes.
Well, it's formally known as the fundamental attribution error, or FAE. And it's foundational in social psychology, isn't it?
Right.
Because it affects our perceptions so much.
Absolutely. It's huge.
So our mission today on this deep dive is to really analyze its impact. We'll look at the psychology behind it, why it's so universal.
And dive into the real-world costs, in hiring, social policy, even legal stuff.
And finally, maybe the coolest part, the deep-seated neuroscience. How it's actually wired in, almost like a survival mechanism.
Yeah, and it's important to start by saying this isn't just one culture's thing. It's genuinely considered the most globally shared mental shortcut.
Wow, globally shared.
But also incredibly costly.
Yeah.
So at its core, the fundamental attribution error, it's this tendency, this really strong pull
to explain what someone else does.
Exactly, an unknown person's actions.
Yeah.
By thinking it's their personality, their disposition.
The internal factors.
Right, the internal stuff. And at the same time, we completely ignore the situation.
The context.
Yeah.
The external factors.
We just gloss right over them.
So, okay, we default to character.
Yeah.
Someone messes up. We don't think, oh, maybe they had a bad day. We think they're incompetent or they're lazy.
It's a fast verdict. Efficient.
But why does it feel so satisfying? Why do we like jumping to that conclusion?
The satisfaction.
Yeah.
It comes from feeling like we can predict things, like we have some control.
Control?
Yeah, this idea goes back to Fritz Heider. He talked about how we're all sort of naive psychologists.
Trying to make sense of the world.
Exactly. Constantly trying to build these common sense explanations so we can predict what happens next, maybe control it a bit. If I can label you trustworthy or reckless,
then I feel like I understand a piece of the puzzle.
Precisely. You feel like you've mastered some complexity. But if I blame the situation, well, the world stays complex, unpredictable, kind of random.
Right. Blaming the person ties it up neatly. Gives you closure.
It does. A nice, clean answer.
That makes a lot of sense. We simplify things. But it's not just about strangers, is it? This FAE thing.
Yeah.
It bleeds into how we see ourselves versus others.
Oh, absolutely. That leads straight to its, let's say, self-serving cousin. The actor-observer bias.
Actor-observer bias. Okay, so that's the double standard.
It's the perfect term for it. It's like cognitive furniture we all have. When we are the actors, when we do something negative, maybe miss a deadline, or like you said, send that really blunt email,
yeah,
we immediately reach for excuses based on the situation. I was under so much pressure, or the client was impossible, or I hadn't slept.
We focus entirely on the external pressures on us.
Totally. But flip it around. When we're the observer, watching someone else send that same short email.
Instant judgment.
Yeah.
Character flaw.
Right. We shift immediately to internal factors. They're obviously incompetent, or they're just rude, or no emotional intelligence.
We demand context for ourselves, but deny it to others.
That's the bias in a nutshell. And it points us to the core reason why this happens. It's the problem of salience.
Salience. Okay, explain that. Why does the situation just vanish when we're watching someone else?
Think about what grabs your attention visually, what's prominent. When you watch someone else, the actor and their action.
The person cutting me off, the colleague typing.
They're right there. They're immediate, they're moving, they dominate your focus for that moment.
They feel concrete, tangible. but the context, it feels more abstract.
Exactly. And often the context is literally invisible. You can't see the organizational pressure making someone tired. You can't see the traffic light sequence or the societal norms they're reacting to.
Or the fact their kid just threw up in the back seat.
Right. All that context is often unobservable, or at least really hard to grasp quickly. So since it's easy to miss,
the brain takes the easy path, the character judgment. Idiot.
it's the path of least resistance, requires almost zero mental effort compared to figuring out the whole situation.
It's like choosing between a simple sum and complex calculus when you're in a hurry. Brain picks the sum.
You got it. But the problem is when we take this simple mental shortcut and apply it to really high-stakes decisions, especially in busy environments, the cost just skyrockets.
Which brings us to the FAE in action. Let's talk about the workplace first. Recruitment, hiring. That seems like a minefield for this.
It really is. When you look at talent acquisition, FAE isn't just some minor quirk. It can be a serious barrier. It stops companies finding the best people, and it's not equitable.
Because HR environments are often fast-paced, lots of quick judgments needed.
Exactly. They almost demand fast categorization. It's fertile ground for this error to take root.
There was a great example of this, a story about a candidate in Paris named Amira.
Yes, Amira's story is quite illustrative. She was up for a pretty competitive tech role, important interview for her.
But she was late.
She arrives 10 minutes late, visibly flustered, a bit rushed, probably sweating a little.
And the hiring manager,
Jean-Pierre. His brain immediately defaulted to those character labels. Unprofessional, disorganized, doesn't care enough.
Purely internal dispositional judgment. If she can't manage time for an interview.
How could she possibly handle project deadlines? That was his instant narrative.
And that initial judgment, it colored everything else, didn't it? Even if her answers were brilliant.
That's the insidious part. It acts like a filter. He started looking for evidence to confirm his unprofessional label, even subconsciously. Her actual competence might have been stellar, but he's already doubtful.
So he's attributing one moment of chaos, being late, to a permanent character flaw.
Precisely. And it was only right at the end, almost as an afterthought, he asked something casual like, "So, was it tricky getting here?"
And then the real story came out.
The context just flooded in. First, a massive unannounced metro strike. Totally out of her control. She had to run the last couple of kilometers.
Okay, that explains the lateness and being flustered.
But wait, there's more. On her run, she actually stopped to help an elderly man who'd fallen in the chaos, helped him up before continuing her sprint to the interview.
Wow, okay, so the initial judgment, unprofessional, just evaporates.
Instantly shattered, replaced by a completely different picture. Resilient, determined, problem solver, compassionate, all under intense situational pressure.
It's a perfect illustration of how we can filter out amazing people just because our brain defaults to the easy judgment.
Textbook case. And it's scary when you think how fast these judgments happen in real recruitment.
That's the CV screening studies.
Exactly. Research shows that first look at a CV, the one that decides yes or no pile, sometimes it's done in as little as 7 seconds.
That's a second.
In that time, that initial FAE label, good fit, not right, unprofessional, gets stamped on before any real analysis happens. And that first quick label opens the door for other biases, too.
Right. FAE isn't working alone here. What else is going on in that HR context that makes it worse?
Well, a big one is the recency effect.
Favoring the last person you interviewed.
Yep. You just remember them better. Their details, their personality, it's all fresh. You might unconsciously forget that the candidate from Tuesday was actually stronger on paper than the one you just saw on Friday.
So you end up choosing based on timing, not merit.
It can happen easily. And then you've got the affinity bias and the halo effect, always working.
Affinity bias.
Yeah.
Liking people who are like us, same background, went to the same school.
Exactly. You feel that click and you mistake it for them being objectively excellent when really it's just comfort and similarity.
And the halo effect, that's about one good trait spilling over.
Yeah, it's powerful. You find one positive thing you like, maybe they have a PhD or they volunteered somewhere impressive, or like the example, they were an Olympic athlete.
Okay.
And that single point casts a positive halo over everything else. You start assuming their work ethic, their skills, everything must be Olympic caliber, even if the evidence isn't there. It can blind you to actual weaknesses.
So if someone competed in the Olympics, you might just assume they're incredibly dedicated and perfect for the job, ignoring other potential issues.
That's the halo effect in action. All these biases, FAE, recency, affinity, halo, they weave together. They lead to biased decisions, often without the manager even realizing they've stopped being objective.
It really drives home the point that Good intentions aren't enough. We need systems. We need structures in place to force us to slow down and be more objective.
Absolutely crucial.
But the FAE's reach goes way beyond the office, right? It shapes how we view big social issues too.
Oh, definitely. That's where it gets really corrosive, I think. It becomes this convenient but deeply flawed lens for looking at social problems.
Leading to things like victim blaming.
Directly. And maybe most dangerously, it lets us off the hook. It masks the need for those big, messy structural solutions.
Like the story of Klaus, the factory worker in Germany.
Klaus's situation is unfortunately very common. He'd worked reliably at a car plant for over 30 years. Loyal, diligent.
Until automation came along.
Right. His whole division became redundant. He was laid off in his late 50s. So now Klaus is at home during the day. He's spending hours applying for jobs that aren't really there for him, struggling to learn new digital skills.
It's a tough spot.
Yeah.
But what does the observer, the neighbor, see?
The neighbor just sees Klaus doing yard work on a Tuesday, and the FAE kicks in immediately.
He must be lazy.
Or he's just not motivated to retrain. The judgment is internal, dispositional, quick, easy, and feels final.
They see the person at home, and they fill in the gaps with the simplest, most negative story about his character.
And what's invisible? The context.
Yeah.
The massive systemic shift automation that cost him his job. The real difficulty older workers face learning brand new skill sets. A job market that might see his age negatively.
All the situational factors are ignored.
Completely. And this is where FAE gets political, sometimes without anyone intending it to.
Yeah.
It allows society, maybe even policymakers, to sidestep the hard questions.
If the problem is just Klaus's character, his laziness, then we don't need to fix the system.
Exactly. There's no need for massive investment in retraining programs or better social support or tackling age discrimination in hiring. The responsibility shifts entirely onto Klaus to just try harder.
It creates this inertia. It's cheaper and easier to judge the individual than to fix the underlying structures.
Absolutely. And data backs this up. Think about employment discrimination. We know it happens. Reports, like from INSEE in France, show nearly 1 in 10 workers experience unequal treatment. That's not millions of people suddenly having character flaws.
It's a structural issue.
It's systemic. But the FAE provides a convenient, if wrong, explanation for those individual outcomes.
And this pattern, blaming the person, not the situation,
Hmm.
it even shows up in how we think about legal matters.
Yeah.
Like accidents.
Runs rampant there, too. Studies looking at how people judge hypothetical car accidents are fascinating.
What did they find?
A stark difference based on perspective. If you ask someone to judge a stranger involved in a crash, they tend to assign a lot of dispositional blame. They were reckless, they're a bad driver.
Okay, standard FAE.
But ask them to imagine themselves as the driver in the exact same situation.
Suddenly the situation matters a lot more.
Way more. They're much more likely to bring up situational factors.
Yeah.
Slippery roads, a momentary distraction, maybe faulty brakes. Their perspective completely changes the attribution.
And in real life, we're almost always the observer judging the stranger.
Which means we're almost always leaning towards that dispositional blame.
You mentioned a paradox in road safety opinions, too.
Yeah, it's quite telling. We have solid data globally showing how dangerous situational factors are, like using smart fans while driving.
That's linked to a lot of accidents, right?
Around 1 in 10 accidents involving injury. It's a huge concrete situational factor causing chaos.
Oh, wow.
Yet public opinion often seems weirdly more lenient towards phone use than, say, drunk driving, even though both can be catastrophic.
So we struggle to connect the situation using the phone to the outcome.
It seems so. We somehow fail to hold that voluntary situational behavior fully accountable. Instead, we might still fall back on thinking the crash happened because the driver was fundamentally bad or irresponsible. We're just more comfortable blaming a disposition than a situation, even when someone chose, like picking up a phone.
Wow. It feels like this error is just everywhere. Hiring, social policy, the highway. It must be really deeply wired into us, more than just habit or culture.
That's the next logical step. If it's this persistent, we have to look deeper into the brain itself, the neurocognitive roots, the evolutionary history.
Because it feels almost like a survival instinct gone wrong.
That's a great way to put it. What's fascinating is that this bias, this FAE, it isn't just laziness. It seems to have started as a genuine survival mechanism developed over vast stretches of time.
Okay, but that creates a puzzle. If it helped our ancestors survive, why is it causing problems for us now in our complex modern world?
It's that classic tension between speed and accuracy. Think about early humans living in small, tight-knit groups. Survival depended heavily on social cooperation and on quickly figuring out who you could trust.
Right, you needed to know who was reliable, who might betray the group, who was dangerous.
Exactly. Making rapid assessments of others' character was literally life or death. If someone acted harmfully, the safest, most adaptive bet was to assume they were inherently harmful, a dispositional judgment, and avoid them.
So focusing on character gave you quick, actionable safety information.
Low-cost, high-value information for navigating a risky social world. Trying to understand the complex context for why someone stole food, well, that takes time and energy you might not have if there's immediate danger.
So judging character became the brain's efficient default. Lower cognitive effort.
Much lower effort. Figuring out all the situational factors in modern life, organizational politics, socioeconomic pressures, systemic biases, that takes a lot of brain power. Judging character, they're untrustworthy, is fast, saves energy, and gives you that little dopamine hit of feeling like you have an answer.
And brain imaging studies actually show this default in action.
They do. fMRI studies have linked the FAE pretty strongly to a specific brain network called the default mode network, or DMN.
Default mode. That sounds like what the brain does when it's just idling.
Kind of, yeah. It's active when we're resting, mind-wandering, but crucially also when we're thinking about others. Specifically, a part of it called the medial prefrontal cortex, the MPFC.
Okay, MPFC. What's its job?
It's consistently linked to what scientists call mentalizing. That's our spontaneous tendency to think about other people's internal states, their thoughts, feelings, intentions, goals.
So when we encounter someone acting weirdly, the MPFC fires up because we're trying to figure out why they did that. What's going on inside their head?
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Research shows that activation in the MPFC, before you even consciously make a judgment about someone's behavior, that activation level predicts whether you're going to choose a dispositional explanation, a character explanation.
So the very act of trying to guess someone's intentions biases us towards blaming their character.
It strongly suggests that our brain's default setting is to interpret actions through the lens of character and intention. Mentalizing is the pathway to the FAE, it seems.
Wow. So if the default mode network, the brain's resting state, is also driving these character judgments, does that mean just being objective requires active, conscious effort? Like, it's biologically tiring to not jump to conclusions.
That is precisely the implication. We seem hardwired to adopt what philosopher Daniel Dennett called the intentional stance, assuming actions spring from internal intentions. Overriding that takes real work from other, more analytical parts of the brain.
We're literally fighting our own default settings to see the situation clearly.
Which helps explain why FAE is so stubborn even when we intellectually know the situation played a role.
And the speed of these judgments is also telling, right? It's not just the brain region, but how fast it happens.
The speed is critical. Reaction times show we make attribution judgments much, much faster for certain kinds of behavior.
Like what?
Things that seem highly diagnostic of character, like acts of strong immorality or displays of really high ability.
And that speed suggests it's not purely rational thought.
It's likely too fast for deep, step-by-step logical analysis. The implication is that emotion effect acts as a shortcut. You feel the wrongness of an immoral act, or the impressiveness of a high-skill act, and that feeling triggers the character label almost instantly.
Emotion drives the judgment before cognition catches up.
It seems to mediate it, yeah. Makes the process quicker.
We can see how this speed, this efficiency, could be useful, even necessary in high-stress situations. Like the paramedic story, Sarah.
Sarah's story is a stark example of FAE as a kind of cognitive triage under pressure. She gets an overdose call, high stakes, life or death, immense cognitive load.
No time for nuance.
Exactly. Her brain needs to conserve energy for the critical medical tasks. So it defaults to a quick energy-saving label for the patient. Addict.
A character judgment. Simplified.
Simplified, harsh, and driven by the need for efficiency, not necessarily Brixonscious malice. It helps her categorize and prioritize in that moment.
But the cost is empathy.
Immediately. That label, addict, shuts down further inquiry into the why. It's only when her partner points out the context, a termination letter nearby, a child's drawing on the wall,
that the picture changes. A father who lost his job, lost hope.
Right. The complex situation rushes in and overwrites the simple, harsh FAE label. It shows how under extreme load the brain has to simplify, often falling back on these character judgments as a survival tool, even if it compromises understanding.
Okay, so our brains default to character, especially for certain types of actions and under stress. This leads us to a more nuanced part of attribution. Not all actions trigger the FAE equally, right?
That's a crucial point. We don't judge all successes and failures the same way. The type of behavior really matters.
This goes back to that theory by Reeder and Brewer from '79 about different types of traits.
Yes, their schematic theory is really helpful here. They distinguish between two main types: partially restrictive, or PR traits, and hierarchically restrictive, or HR traits.
Okay, let's start with PR, partially restrictive.
Think of PR traits as ones where context always matters a lot. Both positive and negative actions are seen as kind of ambiguous, not clearly diagnostic of the person's deep character.
Like being quiet at a party.
Perfect example. If someone's quiet, you don't instantly label them shy. Maybe they're tired, maybe they don't know anyone, maybe they're just listening. You need lots of observations across different situations to figure out a PR trait. Situational excuses are easily accepted.
Got it. So context is key for PR traits. But HR, hierarchically restrictive, that's where the asymmetry kicks in hard.
That's where the FAE gets turbocharged. HR traits are asymmetric because one end of the spectrum, either the positive or the negative, is seen as highly revealing, highly diagnostic. It tends to just overshadow any situational factors.
And the two big HR dimensions are morality and ability.
Exactly. And how we judge them is dramatically different.
Let's tackle morality first. It seems like that's where the negative judgments are strongest.
Overwhelmingly so. Behaviors related to morality think honesty, loyalty, fairness, kindness, especially the negative versions like dishonesty or cruelty.
Yeah.
They get much stronger character attributions and much stronger emotional reactions than ability-related behaviors. This is driven by a really powerful negativity bias in morality.
Negativity bias, meaning one bad moral act defines you.
Pretty much. A single negative moral act telling one significant lie, for example, is seen as incredibly diagnostic. Observers immediately feel confident labeling the person as dishonest.
And the situation doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Even if they lied under extreme duress.
The research suggests situational information is largely ignored when judging immorality. You lied. You are a liar. End of story for many observers.
That's like a switch flips.
Yeah.
Once you show that negative moral trait, the label sticks.
Yeah.
Why is morality so dominant? Why do we care more about that than, say, competence?
The evolutionary explanation is compelling. Negative moral acts, dishonesty, betrayal, cheating, they directly threaten others. They undermine the social fabric, the trust needed for group survival.
An immoral person is a direct danger to the group.
A much more direct danger than someone who simply isn't very skilled at something. The potential cost of misjudging someone's morality was historically very high: loss of resources, danger, even death. So we evolved to be hypersensitive to negative moral signals.
Okay, that makes sense. Now contrast that with how we judge ability, intelligence, skill, talent.
Ability traits show the complete opposite pattern: a strong positivity bias.
So one good act defines you.
A single positive ability act, a student acing a hard test, an athlete making an incredible play is seen as highly diagnostic of high ability. The logic is only someone truly skilled could do that.
Okay. But what about failure? If the star athlete misses the shot or the brilliant scientist makes a mistake?
That's the key asymmetry. Failure in an ability domain is generally considered non-diagnostic.
We don't immediately say, oh, they must be stupid or they have no talent.
Generally, no. We readily reach for situational explanations. Bad luck, they were tired, the conditions were tough, it was just an off day. We protect the high ability label.
So we show a clear preference for seeing ability success as real and ability failure as circumstantial.
Exactly. Observers resist making strong negative character judgments based on poor ability performance. It's a stunning contrast. Immorality is seen as revealing true character, while inability is often excused by the situation.
And this already complex picture gets even more layered when we factor in social expectations, specifically around gender.
Yes, that adds another dimension. Research looking at gender suggests that observers' judgments, particularly on those HR morality traits, can differ depending on whether the actor is male or female.
How so?
Studies drawing on evolutionary psychology ideas found that when a female actor committed a negative moral act, like being dishonest or disloyal, observers gave significantly stronger negative character attributions and had stronger negative feelings compared to when a male actor did the exact same thing.
So the FAE hits harder for women when it comes to moral failings. The judgment is harsher.
That's what the data suggests. The interpretation often ties back to evolutionary theories about mate selection, the idea that historically there might have been intense pressure for males to ensure female faithfulness and loyalty for reproductive certainty.
And that historical pressure might unconsciously make observers today judge female moral lapses as more severe, more indicative of a fundamental character flaw.
That's the hypothesis, that this deep-seated expectation makes female immorality seem more threatening or more diagnostic, leading to a stronger FAE effect.
Okay, so harsher judgment for female moral failure. Was the reverse true for ability? Did men get a bigger boost from showing high ability, maybe linked to historical roles as providers?
That was also hypothesized, that positive ability acts might be seen as more diagnostic for males, but interestingly, the research didn't consistently support that. Yeah, the studies found that male and female actors generally received similar positive judgments for high ability actions. So while high ability is valued in everyone, the specific prediction of a male advantage and attribution for ability wasn't borne out in those contexts. The main gender asymmetry seems focused on the harsher judgment of negative moral behavior in women.
Fascinating. Okay, this entire deep dive has really hammered home that the FAE isn't just a mistake we make sometimes. It's the default setting. It's fast, it's efficient, it's rooted in our evolution and brain structure.
It's the path of least resistance for our minds.
So the big question then is, what do we do about it? If it's so deeply ingrained, how can we possibly override it in our daily lives, in our workplaces, in how we view society?
That is the crucial challenge. Since it's the default, overcoming it requires deliberate, conscious effort. We have to actively shift from that low-effort character judgment to the higher-effort mode of analyzing the context.
We need intentional mental overrides, tools we can actually use.
Exactly. Strategies to force a pause and consider alternatives.
Okay, let's lay some of those out. What's a simple, practical technique?
One very direct method is building in a physical pause. Some people call it the rule of 3 sighs.
3 sighs.
Yeah, or just any deliberate pause. Stop, take a breath, maybe 3 slow breaths. In that pause, consciously force yourself to ask, okay, what if it wasn't them? What if it was the situation?
So the physical pause disrupts the automatic judgment, buys your thinking brain some time.
It interrupts that fast default MPFC activity, yes. Gives the more analytical parts of your brain a chance to engage before the label sticks.
Another powerful tool seems to be just checking our own hypocrisy, the question mirror idea.
Absolutely. It's about basic fairness. Ask yourself, if I did that, what excuse would I use? Chances are you'd immediately point to the situation.
Right. I cut them off because I didn't see them, not because I'm an idiot driver.
Exactly. So if you'd grant yourself that situational excuse, you need to consciously extend the same courtesy, the same benefit of the doubt to the other person.
And also reminding ourselves about the limits of our observation, that recadrage or reframing idea.
Yes, simply saying to yourself, hold on, I saw maybe 3 seconds of this person's entire day, their entire life, the 24 hours leading up to this moment, completely invisible to me. That instantly highlights the missing context.
And especially in work settings, we need to actively look beyond the individual. Look for those structural issues.
Vital for anyone managing people or involved in HR, instead of defaulting to they're lazy or they lack commitment when someone's struggling.
You ask different questions.
Right. Is this maybe burnout, which the WHO clearly defines as work-related, not a personal failing? Are there systemic issues, lack of resources, unclear expectations, impossible workload, hidden logistical problems like childcare or transport issues? You have to dig for the invisible context.
But individual effort, while important, might not be enough, especially in high-stakes situations like hiring or performance reviews. Organizations need systems, right?
Absolutely. Relying on individuals to overcome this deep bias consistently is unrealistic. You need structured practices baked into the process to reduce the noise, the opportunity for these biases to creep in.
Like what kind of structures?
Standardization is key. Move away from unstructured, go with your DET interviews, use common objective rating scales rubrics for everyone.
So everyone is measured against the same yardstick.
Precisely. And mandate a detailed note-taking during interviews. Not just overall impressions, but specific examples linked to the rubric criteria. This helps later, during decision-making, ensuring you recall accurately and aren't swayed by irrelevant things like how charming someone was.
What about tackling that recency effect favoring the last candidate?
That's where shuffling can help. Simple things like varying the order in which candidate profiles are reviewed by the hiring committee, deliberately mixing them up, can counteract that last seen, best remembered bias.
Makes sense. And finally, transparency.
Crucial. Being really clear and open about the goals, the criteria, the process for things like promotions or project assignments. When everyone understands the rules of the game, it reduces ambiguity.
And ambiguity is where FAE thrives.
Exactly. Transparency helps ensure that outcomes, success, or failure are more likely attributed to the actual performance against clear criteria rather than vague character judgments.
This has been incredibly insightful. We started with that visceral road rage moment.
What an idiot.
Reflex.
And we've seen how it connects to everything from hiring decisions to social policy, all the way down to our brain's default wiring. Our baseline seems to be this internal tribunal, always ready to issue a quick character verdict because it's easy.
It's the brain's fast food quick, superficially satisfying, but ultimately not very nourishing for real understanding.
But the deeper truth from all this research in psychology and neuroscience is that the source of trouble, the source of failure or chaos, is so often outside the person. It's the situation, it's our own biases, filtering reality, it's the systems we operate within. That's the core message. Judging is fast, but understanding. That takes effort. It's like cooking a proper meal versus grabbing junk food. You have to take the time, observe the whole scene, look for the ingredients, the context that aren't immediately obvious.
And maybe the most practical takeaway is just remembering that double standard. How quick we are to label others with character flaws, idiot, lazy, incompetent, but how readily we find situational excuses for ourselves.
If we could just pause and consciously try to extend that same situational courtesy, that same search for context to everyone else, that would be a huge step.
A powerful reminder. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.